So, did the vet tell you you had to ride the horse?
You know, it's kind of complicated. Because the
That's
vet,
a yes or no question.
but it's not because I don't remember.
Okay.
It's kind of complicated because the vet is our friend, and the vet listens to this podcast.
Gotcha. Well, we can cut
So-
this if we need to.
So anyway, I just realized that when I started saying that. She's a
But
pretty avid. What do you call those people? Fan. She's a pretty avid fan of the podcast.
Fan?
So, yeah, fan. Or is this? I don't know. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
And
Fan, listener.
supporter. So if we talk about such people, they will hear us talk about them. And when it's somebody you interact with, several times a month, possibly, might as well say good things.
Yeah.
Hey, so how's your Polo Cross group doing up there, man?
Good. We've started practicing some. We had a place where we were going to have like a field, like a club field that we were going to mow and maintain. But the folks that own that property, they weren't going to develop it because of the climate of the market and stuff. Because they're eventually going to like build a house and a barn there. But it was a good like flat place that you could put a field on. But then they decided to just go ahead and build. So we've been kind of limited. I wouldn't say limited because we've still been getting a lot done with the mounted practices, but it's not like we have an actual field where we can all trailer to and practice. But it's worked out because I still have people come to the farm, and honestly, we're rotating pastures now. So literally our Polo Cross field is just whichever field is grazed down the most, and that's where we practice that day. And so it's worked out.
Have you run into any pitfalls of getting a group of people together to do a thing in unity yet?
No, but I haven't really put a lot of pressure on myself to like accomplish a lot. Like, for example, I know I've basically kind of painted the picture of I know I'm going to these tournaments and I'm going to do this. So if you guys want to do it also, we can do that. And I've kind of made it like a low barrier of entry. Like all winter, we just did unmounted practices. And so we had a lot of people just starting out and they just spent 3 months, not even worrying about the horse or even how to play the game really. They were just working on their racket skills. And that paid off big time when we started doing mounted practices because they can think about where do I go with my horse, what should I do, and they're not worried about the pickups and the throws. Like they're more automatic, no different than if you're going to teach someone to rope. You're like, hey, let's get some pretty consistent rope management on the ground, so then that's not in the forefront of your mind when you finally get on the horse and try to like track a heel-o-matic or something.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was thinking along the lines more of like club dues or, community service efforts towards the cause, Do you find yourself doing a lot more work than everybody else?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I don't really like do any. There's not a lot of work to be done, especially since we don't have that field. And you got myself and Kaylee, and then some other people that will practice. And they're practicing, but they're riding horses that we own, and just kind of helping out with the cost of those horses when they come and ride them and stuff. So like today at 6, when Kaylee gets off work, I texted those people. I said, hey, we're going to ride at 6. And Kaylee and I are doing it no matter what. So it's like you can come and tack up your horse and take care of your horse and ride it if you want to, or you can not come and the horse will just stay in the pasture and it's not a big deal. And same with people that are off the property. It's like, hey, we're going to practice at this time. If you want to come on. If not, no pressure. And because of that, it's like, we haven't had to charge dues or anything. Kind of the main thing is just making sure everyone's got like a waiver and stuff. But that's just like the same as any client that would come to ride here or anything like that. It would definitely be more work if we had a field to maintain, or if we were trying to host tournaments or something like that. But I know realistically, I can't shoulder that burden by myself. And I mean, the biggest thing with any organization, I think, is the people. So like the way I look at it is I'd rather have limited facilities and limited number of opportunities, but like a lot of people that want to come and do it, which we built like probably a group of like maybe like 8 to 10 people that really want to come and do it. But the people are way more important, right? Because it doesn't matter if you have like a great facility, and that's like with anything with horses. If you have a great facility and all this stuff, but you only got 3 people that are bought in, well, those 3 people better be millionaires, or better have nothing else going on in their lives. Like you need a village to kind of all pull in the same direction.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
hey man, I was just thinking, why do you think the previous podcasts that just you and I did have such low ratings? Is it just our unpopularity, or did we preach too much, or like, what do you think we did? Because I liked listening to them, and I know like our dozen or so listeners might have comments. We're not really asking for your all's comments, but just between us, I wonder what it was that gave us such low ratings.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. First off, I haven't really thought about that at all. But you're right that they do get lower listens. But I bet you it's okay. Let's take like Buck has been on several podcasts, right? Yeah. How many people, or how many times have you like, I'm going to listen to Buck Brannaman on that podcast, and then I'm not going to listen to any more of those podcasts?
Yeah, anything else? Yeah.
So I think that's mainly what it is.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
You get the draw, like especially the clinicians, people that kind of have a following already, people looking out for them on the internet. So it's like, oh, there's new Buck Brannaman content or new Joe Walter content or whatever, and so they're like, I'll do that, and then they might stick around, they might not, but that's kind of I think that's just the nature of the beast, right? Like,
yeah,
it'd be no different if you had like YouTube videos, and I mean we have YouTube videos, but like you were making, like if you were Dale Brisby or something, I'm sure his videos with JB Mooney get way more views than just the videos of him and his crew, because you're getting all of his followers plus the JB Mooney followers. And there might be some bleed over. But when it's just us, it's just the people that listen to this podcast normally, and we don't have any sort of outside draw bringing new people in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Figured it was something like that. But, man, because I don't know about you. Like before doing this podcast, okay, I'll back up beyond that. Like, do you remember seeing ads or reading books about things, or you see an app and the whole gist of the app is learn a new thing every day, or like some kind of program that helps you learn a new word or learn a skill or learn how to
Sure.
speak a new language every day.
Yeah.
That stuff kind of frustrated me for a long time because I would see that and I thought that's so dumb. How do you learn a new thing every day? I don't have time for that. It's tons of work. And now, since we've started doing this podcast, like my whole world has flipped. And if a week goes by where I didn't learn enough, I feel kind of empty. Every day, I feel like I come across something that I learn. I learn new things all the time. And like I can't even imagine myself before when I used to feel like that was so much work or it would be hard to go out and find a new thing every day. And now it seems to come to me easily, and at the same time I have like more energy or more interest to go out and find new things. Like if I'm out driving, hauling horses somewhere, I'll just start searching for podcasts or books on things. And like the other day, I think it was on Tuesday last week, I went down the Wim Hof rabbit hole. You know who that is? The cold water
Mm-mm.
guy. Oh, you got to check him out. So
No.
he's like the grandfather of the ice bath. And it's fascinating. And what's crazy is over the course of an hour, even if someone's ideas or their supposed truths aren't necessarily true, after the course of an hour, you can listen to somebody on your phone and your mind is open to a whole new dimension of things you never thought about. And that's where that thought popped in my head that it's crazy. I used to think it was hard to learn something new every day because it's really quite easy and it's enjoyable. And it's very cool to be alive right now. But yeah, I totally went down the Wim Hof rabbit hole, and then I'm driving along, about to run off the road on my phone, trying to figure out how to build an ice bath. I'm still not sure how to do it, but
Yeah.
they make those things so dang expensive. I don't know if anyone out there has one, but it's ridiculous. All you need to do is insulate water and have some kind of a cooling device on there. Because I'm not into the ice, like with actual ice in the bath, because you've got to make ice. And who's got an ice maker? Could be cheaper, actually, to buy an ice maker. But anyway, those things are ridiculously expensive. But if you look up the benefits, it seems like a really important thing
Yeah.
to have
We used
if you live an active lifestyle, or especially if you don't, actually.
Yeah. We used to do ice baths a lot in high school. Like after track practice, we would either do it as a group. They'd have like basically like the big like 16-foot kiddie pools,
Yeah.
And we were right next to a grocery store, our high school. So the coach would just go over and fill his SUV full of ice and fill up the kiddie pool and dump all the ice in it, and then everyone would sit down and put a timer on your watch for like 5-10 minutes or whatever, ice your legs. We didn't ice our whole bodies, just iced our legs and then go. And he said, or get you 220-pound bags of ice and put it in your bathtub at home when you get home, and just like do that before you have dinner. And it makes a difference. It seems now it's almost more mainstream where it's not just athletes doing it anymore. It makes a huge difference. There's a guy. It's not really like the same thing as an ice bath, but there was a guy who was a offensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns, and he's known for like his longevity, right? He played like 15 seasons or something crazy like that as an offensive lineman, which is just absolute murder on your body. But he got the Browns to buy him it was almost like the opposite of a sauna. And like after
it's like
practice,
a cryo chamber, right?
yeah, this cryo chamber, and it would go down to like this ridiculous negative whatever, like just
I think
low
they'll
enough
take
so
it down to like 250 below.
yeah, that's what I think, like down to negative
Yeah.
250, and he'd like get in that every day, and sit there. And he said he felt like that was the only thing that like saved his joints from all those impacts. Because I mean, you imagine like if your job is literally just to run into and move other 300-pound people, like that has to just cause so much inflammation in your body.
Yeah. Yeah, you should check out Wim Hof. Really cool stuff. But just the revitalization that comes about as a result of getting your body cold externally, it man, it seems amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking at him now. He looks like a caveman.
He climbed Mount Everest in his underwear or shorts, something like that, to prove that with the right breathing techniques and exposure to cold therapy, you can climb Mount Everest and you don't need an oxygen tank and you can do it in your shorts.
Jeez. The
Yeah.
breathing's almost more impressive to me because not a lot of people do it without oxygen.
Yeah, he's got some impressive breathing skills. He's done some crazy stunts. I think he's done 7 minutes under ice water, like under the ice in a lake.
Yeah. And it's funny because he's like, I mean, he's 64, so he's not out of shape, but he doesn't look crazy in shape. He'd look like just a normal guy on the street,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet
You ever
he has an
seen
amazing
that?
immune system.
You ever seen that documentary, Seven Peaks?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's this guy. He's from Nepal, and they do the 14 like mountains that are all over 8,000 meters, and he does it in 7 months, which has never been done before. Like physically, people can't do that. And so it's like him and this team of all of these guys from Nepal, and they were talking about how because they're at elevation, they felt like the Nepalese were like a lot stronger at elevation than most people were. And yeah, they're like they go through Everest. They do like all this stuff and just roll through these mountains. And the craziest part is too, like in between they'll like go back to base camp and party and like drink all this whiskey and get really hungover, and then the next day like, all right, now we're going to go summit the next mountain. And
Dude,
just
that's
do all
crazy.
this stuff that's like, yeah, this is insane. He was really interesting. I think he was on I heard about him when he went on Joe Rogan, the guy who led the expedition Nimrod Persia.
Yeah,
But that's a really good documentary. It's on Netflix. Those
I'll have to
mountaineer
check
guys
that
are
out.
crazy. Yeah.
So is he a Sherpa?
Yeah, I think like all of them were Sherpas. Like that's what they did for a living.
Okay.
But I guess there was kind of this stigma that they felt like the Nepalese were underrepresented in their mountaineering because all these mountaineering achievements, if you look through the history of that sport or endeavor, whatever you want to call it, all these mountaineering guys are like, they're white Europeans basically. Like they're like white billionaires, and they have a team of Nepalese guys helping them out do
Yeah.
this stuff. But when you list off like so and so summited this and so summited here in X amount of days and all these like records, it was just a bunch of guys who like weren't even from the same continent as all these mountains. So that was a big point for them, is that they wanted to all be Nepalese and like do it all kind of their own way.
Yeah. Well, the Nepalese guys were probably helping out, right? But the
Yeah.
Europeans were
Yeah,
getting all the credit.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like they weren't doing it, but it wasn't at the forefront. But no, this guy's crazy. He was a Gurkha, which is, from what I've gathered, it's like a a special ops group in the British military, and they're from India.
Yeah.
And so he was a Gurkha before he went and did all this. And so he's a special ops guy, and how they're just mentally just hard as they come, all that stuff. So
Yeah. Man, I'll have to check that out. Seven
yeah,
Peaks.
it seemed
Okay.
right up your alley. You're into all those type of guys.
Yeah. Well, clearly it seems like you are too a little bit, but I think our
Yeah.
society, man, for guys like us that work outdoors and ride horses and, you know, society, there's not a lot of guys in like mainstream society that you can relate to. Or, I don't know about you, but in your day to day life, you try to have people around that are a lot better than you and a lot
Hmm.
tougher mentally, physically. They have robust lifestyles. And so, like, mainstream society doesn't produce a lot of those people. And so, the group of people that you end up looking up to, uh, I think it's easy to find a lot of guys that are ex special ops that are, you can kind of admire their ferocity and just their overall, just take on the world kind of attitude. Because even for you and I being on the East Coast, we're not next to a lot of great horsemen even that we
Hmm.
can kind of like ride with. And like, we know some guys that are real, like, they're like David Goggins on the back of a horse, but we don't have a lot of those right by us. So you admire them, but then you also look for other characters, even if they don't do what we do. You look for some people you can look up to. And yeah, there's definitely some ex, spec op guys that are pretty admirable. And you can even see how if they got into horses, they could probably do a good job. Some of them not really, because I don't know, maybe they're a little troubled. They're pretty mentally focused to the point where the horse might not keep up with that. But you can
Yeah.
kind of take what they're saying and what they're doing and apply it to this, and just to getting up in the morning, right, and making a
Hmm.
schedule and feeding and getting on the next horse. And I found that was something that I struggled with, was like getting a lineup of horses to ride in a day, and then you ride one horse and you have a good ride, and then you put them away, and then you don't just get on the next horse like you should. You kind of dwell on your success from the one horse, and then you wait for a while, and you end up checking your phone and getting a cup of coffee, and you know, next
Yeah.
thing you know, you like
Got to grab
wasted
a bite to
35
eat.
minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
grab a bite to eat, check your email, run down to the mailbox. And in a way, when you work from home like we do, you kind of have all the comforts of life like right there at your fingertips. So you can like go grab a bite to eat, and then you're like, well, I'm here. I should sit down on the lazy boy for a minute and kick the TV on. And the next thing
Yeah.
you know, you're like taking a nap, and it's 2 in the afternoon, and
Yeah.
you only rode one horse. So taking that mentality of like, ride the horse, appreciate the good ride, put him up, and he'll get the piece, but you get the next horse and get on there, and go to
Hmm.
work and get done what you decided to get done, and then take a break and then get back on. And so those guys helped me a lot with that, with having a good mindset to really accomplish something, and not so much in the saddle, like I'm going to accomplish this, and this, or I'm not going to put you away. I try to
Hmm.
leave that out of the gate. I think I'm getting a little better at that. But in terms of like big picture throughout the day, I don't think of what I'm going to get done with a particular horse, but I do make sure that I get that horse worked with. And then if an hour later I'm still not at a good place, so what? The horse will think about it. He'll make a change, but I'm putting him away. I'm going to take 5 minutes to get switched over to the next one, and then get on and go to work. And I don't do that every day, but I try.
Yeah.
Try to be more like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I go back and forth because I don't think I'm special ops level. I'm not trying to compare myself to those people and what they do and the sacrifices they make. But I definitely feel like through sports and school, I have a switch I can turn on where I'm like I can turn into a German Malinois and just be like, all right, I'm only going to focus on this one thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I'm focused on. But the problem is that's not necessarily sustainable, because you know what happens if you go too far the other way? Then you never answer your emails, or you never call anybody back, or you forget to feed yourself, or like all these things is like stuff I've done. So I have to like figure out a balance, because I've done the same thing too. It's so easy. I heard someone call it productive procrastination. You know, like you have another horse tied up and you're like, oh, well, I just need to do this, and I really should call this person, and da da da. And like technically you are being productive if someone was going to take you to court all of a sudden. But it's like, is that really what you need to be doing right now? And
Yeah.
so I have to think about that.
Yeah, that's Stephen Pressfield's whole theory of resistance, like things that you allow to take control in your life that do not work towards the goal, but they serve as a good distraction, like you said, to make you feel like you're being productive. But that thing that you really want to do, like I think it can happen with horses. Like you can have a dream that you want to ride horses, and you have some plans down the road, and it's not fully, culminated in your mind what it's going to be, but you're just going to work towards it, and you're going to get there, and you kind of envision yourself in the future. But then day to day, you don't really work towards it. You spend your days doing what you just said, like doing random other stuff, and like thinking of side ventures and all kind of other ideas, and calling people, and wasting time using up your energy on things that maybe even give you some value in the short term, but they don't work towards that goal in your mind and really your dream, like the thing that you might have to work for 10 years at and not see any return. You're not putting any work towards that. You're just kind of thinking about it, but you're putting all your work into these things that make you look like a busy bee, and you're really not getting anything done.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think that way too. But there is kind of a balance. Like you said, then you might end up not calling people back or not answering your emails.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's common sense, right? Like you need to pick a project and you need to do it. And then when you're done that project, if you can be self-aware, then go ahead and check your email and check your phone and check your Instagram or whatever on your phone. And then you're done. And then you get the next horse and then you ride. Or if you're a welder, whatever, you get another welding rod out and start on a new section of pipe and go to work. And you work for an hour. Then you stop and you check your stuff. But I think it's really hard. If you're not disciplined at all, then you could do either one. You could just be a naturally diligent person, and you could work all day long and just ignore everybody in your life and everything and have all kind of problems, yet you're extremely productive in one area. Or you can be the guy who has who still has no self-discipline, but is just naturally lazy, and he's just like drifting from one thing to the next all day. But I think as you work on that discipline, then you will have the capability to say, hey, I'm going to ride this horse until 12. And then from 12 till 12:15, I'm going to check my email, call this person, and send this check in the mail. And then I'm going to go grab that horse and ride for another hour. And then you're going to be as disciplined about checking your mail as you are about riding the horse, to the point where if you're supposed to post an Instagram post for your business or whatever, like you're going to take time and do that the best you can. And when you're done, you X out of that page and you're done and you're on to the next thing. And you just carry that discipline from one task to the next.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tough, man, because it takes to do that and then not just kind of let your mind wander. It takes a lot more energy.
Yeah.
You have to like I said, it's easy enough to be on autopilot. I'll tell you the other thing too that has been kind of interesting and plays into all this is, especially when I first get horses, this is something new I've just started doing in the last couple weeks. When I first get a horse, I'm gonna work with them more than like the hour a day I normally would. You know, say if you got 7 or 8 horses to get through. In the beginning, like I'm gonna try to start front end loading everything, because I'd like to have it where by the end of a week maybe, and obviously from horse to horse you can't just like put them in a regimented schedule. You have to do what fits the horse. But in general, I'd like to where we get groundwork stuff is like, I feel like it's solid at the end of a week. Even if that means like, you know, you get 2 new horses in at the beginning of a month, well, you might spend 3 hours a day with both those horses at the very beginning. But I'm starting to notice that taking the time to do that, especially with the really troubled ones, is paying a lot of dividends later, to where now I can be like, hey, I've got half an hour. How about I saddle this thing up, ride him for 15 minutes, give him a good experience, and then leave him be, you know, where I wasn't doing that before. I was almost like in high school. It was like, first you go to period 1, and period 1's this horse, and then at 9 o'clock, then you go to the next horse or whatever, you know. And there's just some horses, especially the troubled ones, I was like, I just got to thinking and talking to some folks, and I was like, you know, if I could just sit there for 3-4 hours and we could get to the bottom of this, like, I mean, really get to the bottom of this, because he's got so much baggage already. I think taking the time to do that once would really make a big change in that horse. And, you know, I think I could do it quicker if I did 3 hours, all in one go, and got him to really turn loose or something, and instead of spend an hour Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and kind of only get halfway through the problem each day.
Yeah.
So it's something I'm playing around with. I don't know if I'll stick to it, but I've just had some horses here lately that I'm like, man, we really need to get to the bottom of this. And I feel like even though we make progress, it's like we make progress and then go back, then make progress and then go back. And I was like, well, today I'm just gonna stick with it. And, you know, I had some extra time this weekend, so on Saturday I was like, I'm gonna stick with it, and I've got time to stick with it. And if it takes 45 minutes, that's fine. If it takes 4.5 hours, that's fine. And it did that, and then got him out the next day, and he's like a different horse. It was like, okay, finally we've moved on. We can start learning again. So
yeah, I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, kind of like front end load the work. Like if you had horses for 30 days, like,
yeah,
take the first week to be like, okay, you know, you might at the end of this week, you're at least going to be where you're gentle enough. I feel like I could ask someone to go catch you for me, or something like that, you know, and you can play ball with everybody else.
I would say, man, at the very least, just playing around with your approach to getting your lineup for the day ridden may affect your horsemanship. Like I've found, so like I told you a minute ago, like the latest thing I've been doing is, you know, getting out so many horses and then saying I'm going to ride this horse from 9 till 10. And then this horse doesn't need as much. I'm going to ride him for 30 minutes and then this one for an hour. And I've never done that before up until like the last 2 weeks. And it's really changing it's a few things for me. And, you know, it's just personal stuff, you know, but it's making me think differently about a few things when I have an hour to ride a horse, and when that hour's up, it's up. And I found myself approaching things quite a bit different. As opposed to before, I didn't ever have a time constraint. And that had its own benefits, but also some drawbacks. And I would just have 3 horses caught maybe before lunch, and I would just ride one till I got the changes I liked and put it away, and then ride the next one until I got done what I thought I needed to. And then the third one, maybe that one I had a goal or was just riding until it got a bit better. Whatever it was, I was kind of doing it until I felt good about my ride, rather than just deciding a point I was going to put that horse away and making sure that, well, I don't want to give it all away, but one thing for sure that's changed through doing that for me is I don't really think about what changes I get done in the horse. I just make sure that things are kind of timing up so that when, say I'm riding till 10, when I swing off that thing at 10, he's not all lathered up and bothered. That I've kind of landed the plane. Whatever is going on, even if I only made it, off the runway and then had to circle back and land at the same airport, good deal. Just land safe, put them away, fight another day. And through thinking of it that way, it's changed a few things. And I'm sure, check back in a month or so, maybe I'll be trying to do it differently. But I find every time I reapproach the way that I ride the horses, it helps me with my horsemanship approach and just the way that I ride and what I'm thinking about while I'm riding.
Yeah.
I don't know if you find something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely merit to having that time constraint and saying, well, you can't. It makes you very aware of saying, well, you can't just blow everything up and then pick all the pieces together like maybe you have been able to in the past because you had the luxury of having all afternoon with one horse or something like that.
Yeah.
It's I'm sure it's probably situational. There's times where that's what that horse needs is like, I just need to take him out, have a good experience, and then put him back. But there might be, I haven't found it in horses that are really kind of true starts. It's usually the horses that maybe someone else tried to start them or tried to do the groundwork with them, and then they've gotten kind of really bothered by something. There might be times where there's a big problem in this horse and it's going to take more than an hour to fix this problem. That's just my opinion. Maybe someone more skilled than me could fix it, but there are times where you're like, I don't know, like if you only do 45 minutes each day, you will probably get there eventually, but it might cause you to put off addressing the elephant in the room for a really long time.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. And I think, like you said, it's situational because it depends on your temperament too as a person. Like while you were talking, I was thinking about what I've been learning over the past couple of weeks through doing this, and the horses that I've benefited the most from saying, I'm done after an hour, have been the ones that I would consider the troubled ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, doggone it, you have the same problem every time I get you out. And I'll end up doing groundwork just ad nauseum, and then I'll ride them ad nauseum. And I'm like, look, it's going to happen any moment now. I'm going to keep riding. I'll get a good change, and then I'll put them away. Those horses, I've had the best effect on those horses by just riding them for a certain amount of time, because then it makes me get my groundwork done in 10 minutes. And if it's not perfect, oh well, you're about to get on that thing. So you better, if you're not going to get it perfect, at least get it calm. And then, in the hour I ride it, it's like, okay, yeah, you want to get something done, but if you open up a can of worms, been, do you have enough skill to get all those worms cleaned up and lined out? And
Mm-hmm.
frankly, a lot of times I don't. So by doing a little bit less, it's helped me kind of get a whole ride on the horse and make some changes, but not go in there and start tearing out walls that I can't rebuild. You know, a lot of the analogies in my head are very like physical, I know, but I think of it like that. Like when I was a kid, when we were doing remodeling, like my dad, he liked to work like very, just kind of work like one room at a time. And so if we were going to remodel the kitchen, we weren't going to tear out the kitchen, the bathroom, and the living room all at once. And as a kid, I always wanted to do it that way. I wanted to do like mega scale renovation. I was like, come on, man, let's just tear the whole first floor and then we'll rebuild it. But looking back, my dad was smart because it was a crew of like a few people and we weren't all that. So he would say, no, let's just do the kitchen right now. And then we can stage our stuff in the living room. And then when we're done in the kitchen, we'll do the living room, right? And so I feel the same way with horses. Like if you go in there and you're like, okay, he's got these 5 problems. My personality kind of wants to like take all 5 problems and get them right out in the sunshine and then just work on them, get that horse coming around. And it's much harder for me to kind of leave some things alone and make sure it's safe, but leave some things alone and just work on the one little thing that I actually have some power over. And then once I get a change and it's getting better, say, okay, cool, I got that going. Now let's go to the next room, you know, and let's demo a wall in there and rebuild it. And then when that's kind of back together structurally and the project's coming to a close, then I can move on to the next thing after that. I naturally am not like that. I want to tear it all down, build it all back at the same time. And so that hour, I think that's what it is. That hour is helping me kind of say, hey, man, you better pick what it is you're going to work on. Because in an hour, when you swing off this thing, I mean, you might leave him high and dry, but you could leave him intact if you do something your size. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And I think part of that too, if we're being honest, I think the reason I'm having to shift to this more is you and I have very different personalities that way. Like I think you're much more, like you said, much more direct, where, you know, say you're like having a conversation with someone, I'm way more willing to just let things go by and just not worry about it unless I feel like what is being said is going to affect me directly. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like one thing you do a good job of that I don't do a good job of, you know, just in life in general, is if there's a problem or something or an opinion that you really have, you voice it, you know, and, you know, you see a horse and it's like, oh, there's this, this, and this. Let's work on that. So I think my personality, I almost can like use that. Oh, let's have this hour. Let's get into that. Da da da. I can almost use that as an excuse to not address something I know that needs to be addressed. Does that make sense? Like I think I'm too far on the other side. Yeah, because it's got to be a balance, right? You don't want to.
Yeah.
You don't want to, like you said, just rip out everything. But at some point, you can't just do all the little rooms because you don't want to do the big living room. At some time, you gotta do the living room, you know.
Yeah.
And like I said, doing the living room
makes sense, man. Because if you're the kind of guy, if you're the kind of guy that does one room at a time, yeah, maybe you need to practice on one of the small projects. But if after you've done a few projects, you start to learn, you better tackle the one that takes the longest first. Otherwise, you'll have a deadline and you'll be working on this and working on that. And then you'll look up and go, oh, crap. The last one is the biggest one. Rather than hitting the biggest one first and then working your way down in size so that you kind of said that, front load the big project first. Yeah, I think we're saying something very similar, but you pointed that out, that we do have very different personalities when it comes to that. And a lot of times, man, like I really admire your sense of diplomacy because, I mean, both of our personalities come with drawbacks, but I'm sure you can recall there's been a few times where I've called you up and I'm like, hey, I'm getting ready to call this guy and say this, and that, and the other. And you're kind of like, in fact, you know what's funny is I'm surprised by how taken back you are. Like, I'll tell you something, and I don't know why I think this, but I'm like, oh, Joe will say, yeah, man, that's great. And you're so like, you're like, Ben, I don't think I would say that. And my first reaction is like, really? And then after about 10 minutes and we're talking and I think about that and I'm like, oh gosh, man, you just saved me from being a total fool, like making a total fool of myself because I'm ready to just, stick it to him. And you're like, yeah, I don't think I'd say that, Ben. And so I do admire that diplomacy a lot because it goes a long way paired with some, you get a plan and you know what you want to get done, but then you have the ability to kind of consider the other guy's feelings before you just lay it all on him.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of those, I mean, people are no different than horses. Like you're kind of born with a disposition and things you might be better at than other people. And then if you want to be well rounded, like you said, you've got things you're working on. I've got things I'm working on, and it's almost like a journey back to the middle, right? To be in balance and be able to be the right thing in the right situation. So I think that's kind of what the front end loading deal is with me. It's just part of my journey. I might not have to do it as much. I might think it's not required of me maybe 6 months from now, but right now I feel like that's what I should do, and has been what's working for me. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And like I said, some of the colts,
well, you
man,
were talking about that. Yeah.
Go ahead. I was gonna say some of the colts, man. I mean, they're just sweet little puppy dogs, and most people could get them started with like 45 minutes every afternoon. And so it's not like I'm gonna take a puppy dog and take them to task and say, all right, we're gonna, I'm just gonna drill you for the next 3 hours. Like, I'm not gonna do it if I don't think it's required. I'm just I'm allowing myself the ability to address the problems and take the time needed to address the problems if I feel like they're there.
Yeah. Yeah. So while we were talking about this, it was making me think about like also how each month you learn that you wish you would have gotten a certain amount of things done at the beginning to make the rest of the training easy, which is kind of what you were talking about with like front loading that stuff. But also I think it's like an orientation. It's like when a new horse comes in, it's not necessarily that you teach them a certain thing or you get a certain problem worked out of their system or something. Because that stuff's all finite, but it's like you're setting the tone. And every time a horse leaves and a new horse comes in and you're kind of thinking about that last horse and why you didn't get it as far as you wish you would have in your mind. And like maybe you don't think about this, and I don't like beat myself up over it, but certainly every horse that goes home, like it's not my Mona Lisa, so I consider why it's not, and I don't expect it to be, but I do consider why it's not. So I'll think, I would have liked it to be this far along, so I wonder why it wasn't. And a lot of times it has to do with, well, like obviously you didn't have enough time because it was only there for so much time, but then you start to think about that time and you're like, well, there's other guys that are better that do get a lot of these things done in that amount of time. And for me, it always leads back to the very beginning and some things that if I could have got it going sooner, then I would have had all that time, even if it's just a month, I would have had that whole month to work on some more advanced things, and the horse would be farther along when it left. So it's like that first week was very integral, very important for the horse. And then after that, the next like 3 weeks or so, when you're kind of riding it, you're over the you're over a lot of humps. You only feel like you get so much done. And a lot of times it makes me think of like setting the tone. Like when the horse comes in, it's not that I need to teach him something as much as like be a certain kind of horseman. Like allow that horse to feel that I'm firm and very definitive about some things. And at the same time, like that I'm calm and I'm a good place to be. Cause like I find major setbacks when I have a horse come in and like I see his problems. So I think, well, I'm going to take care of that. But then I do it kind of heavy handedly. And then he doesn't want to be caught. I find so much is lost when you spend like a whole week out of a month just having a hard time catching a client horse, or even if it's one of my horses. Where if like the first day after you work with him, when he shows up, if he like comes up to the fence and wants to be caught, like that already makes things better. So if you can have that going on, and then on top of that, if you can define things, so you can define it and make him think you're a good place to be. And I feel like every time I get a new horse in, that's the main thing. Like the first week, I'm like, man, I want this horse to realize like I'm dead serious about the stuff that I'm trying to show him. Like no matter what it is that he has his problems with and I'm trying to work on, I want him to realize I am like Stonewall Jackson and I'm like super nice. And that's fun. Like that's a fun thing to try to, and Gandhi. Like I'm not the Dalai Lama, but I don't do any of that. But but yeah, for me, that's a fun struggle every month, is to spend that first week or maybe the first day or two being really firm. Like, hey man, like this is no joke. And I'm very nice to be around. Like I'm peace and I'm firm.
And for a lot of horses, it can be like, hey, I don't know what's gone on, back where you came from, but I would really encourage you to try to think and solve your problems here. Because a lot of horses I get, at least, they're just all on reaction. It's just, if there's any sort of adversity at all, they just come completely unraveled, where it's like, hey, just so you know, if there's a little pressure, first off, you don't need to freak out, you just need to think. And 99.9 times out of 100, the answer is going to be me. The answer is going to be kind of thinking about what I'm thinking about. And that's what I see a lot. And you kind of said the same thing, but like a lot of these horses, it's like they're on autopilot, and you're taking them off autopilot for the first time in their life.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, because I don't know if you get many horses that have already been started or have been ridden before, but those can be some of the worst horses you get in, because the first couple days you're thinking, oh, this is easy money. This is kind of easy. Horse has already been ridden. He already knows a few things. And then when you open up his mind to the idea that he gets a say, like he doesn't really get a say, but he kind of gets a vote. Like he gets to choose.
It can be his choice.
Yeah. Boy, they kind of, things can get worse before they get better for a little while there. But it's so cool. Their eyes light up and the horse totally changes. But it's like you said, it's like autopilot got shut off and they're like, whoa, I can choose and I can try things. And then ultimately, hopefully you get them to where they want to be with you, and mentally and physically.
Yeah. Because a lot of times they're like, wait, I can choose. I choose to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah. Some of those herd-bound horses. Yeah.
I choose to not play this game anymore. Like, well, that was the wrong choice, but I recognize that was your choice.
Yeah, it makes me think if you had a bunch of guys in a some kind of a working camp for inmates or something, and then you came in there and you said, all right, you guys you're all free. but there was like nowhere to go. So they all
Mm-hmm.
still had to keep living there. But you're like, all right, you guys are all free. We're going to establish democracy and we're going to have town hall meetings once a week. You would have some hands going up. You know, it would take a
Yeah.
couple weeks, but once they got used to the idea they had a say, you would have all kind of problems. You'd have people saying, hey, I think this and I think that. And it would take you a
Mm-hmm.
little while to sort society out. And that's how some of those horses feel. They take a
Yeah.
little bit to get used to it. And then they're like, oh, well, by the way, I was thinking, you know, I'd really like to canter towards that gate every time we leave the arena. Or, you know, I'd like
Yeah.
to look outside the fence over here. Or frankly, I want to nip at you and you step in the saddle, or like all kind of goofy things they've
Yeah.
never been
Oh,
allowed to do. All of a sudden they're like, dude, this is great. I'm going to try it and see if he lets me get away with it.
yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing too, man, is you gotta like what you said, they gotta know that you're firm, because probably 8 out of 10 of them, they have been around people who just kind of mean what they say, don't actually mean what they say. So you got to communicate that from out the gate. And then you got to say, but also, if you do run into some problems, I'm probably going to be the answer. And if it seems like if you can get that going, then, I mean, talk about efficiency. Like, if you could get those, like, 2 things in there, like, hey, I mean what I say, or maybe 3 things. I mean what I say. You don't need to be afraid. And if there's a problem, I'm the answer. If you can like get those 3 things, then you can like really roll with the horse. Like, you can teach a horse a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. But you got to have, at least I feel like you got to have those 3 things going. And I realize that's a really gross oversimplification of horsemanship, but it's but when you see all these horses that come in, and a lot of them are problem horses, that those seem to be like the 3 things they're missing. One of those 3 things,
Yeah.
if not all 3.
Yeah.
Like, they might not be afraid,
Well,
but they don't think you're the answer, and and they definitely don't think you mean what you say. Or they might think you mean what you say,
yeah.
but they're really afraid and they don't think you're the answer. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you said that's an oversimplification. I don't think it's an oversimplification. Like, those 3 things are 3 points that you need to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going to make a joke like, yeah, Joe, you could make a Facebook ad. Like, want to train a horse? I'll tell you the 3 things you need to know. So you can, you know, and don't you have that with finances and real estate and public speaking and like all those ads? They're all like, I'll give you the 5 points you need to be a professional. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, probably the 5 points or the 2 points or whatever, it's probably totally legit. Like, those are the 5 points. Just like what you said, those 3 points, those are the 3 points. What separates someone from that and being a great horseman? Like, years of hard work. Like,
Yeah.
because you just mentioned those 3 points. Those are extremely important. But like, even we don't really understand what goes into implementing and being the best horseman you can be.
Mm-hmm.
And use those 3 points. Like, we don't even understand that. Like, we get to use it. It's almost like borrowed time sometimes, like compared to how good we'd like to be. And so anybody wanting to be a horseman, like, yeah, definitely those are the 3 points. Also, like, proper application and knowledge of how to use the 3 points is important. And also why probably most financial, 5 points of success or anything else like that, it's totally legit. You just have to pair that with hard work and learning from your experience and just staying on the move, And so I don't think that's an oversimplification at all. If anything, it's just it's like the tip of the iceberg. Like, the tip of the iceberg isn't fake. There's a whole iceberg underneath. You only can see the top. You have to get your cold water wetsuit on and dive down there. Then you'll see the rest of it. But it doesn't make the top fake. It just means that's just a little bit you see. And a lot of people get drawn to that, the 3 points thing. But if they have some real gumption, they'll see the rest of the iceberg. And when they see it, it won't freak them out. They'll just put their work boots on, and get to work and get on the move,
Yeah, exactly. All right, timeout. I gotta take a pee break, and I'll be right back.
All right. Sounds good. So, folks, if you thought we were going to really take the time out, well, Joe was gone doing a pee break. You were wrong. You were very wrong. You guys are left with me. But in Joe's absence, we will we'll talk about something, figure something out. I don't know if you guys have seen our mugs. That's something to talk about. I say our mugs. We have 2 of these mugs, and we're working on some ideas. You know, we don't have anything definite yet. We're thinking about making something that we can sell to you guys. A little memento for the on-the-move diehard patriots. So, you know, stay tuned in the future. We'll see. Joe and I may talk a little bit more about it here in a minute, but yeah, we just want to do some cool things like that. We might do some hats here in the future, but we'll see. We are not merchandise experts. We are merely humble followers of the horsemanship journey and very, very amateur folks in the entertainment space. So as time goes on and we get better at all this stuff, better at our 3 points, 5 points, I don't know, we'll have to have a podcast sometime on all the finer points of podcasting, but that'll be in 10 years or so when we're any good at this. Might take us a little while, but so far so good. Joe's sure taking a while. I think I hear him coming back. And start playing him in. We'd play him in if we could play music on this outfit. We don't have free license for that yet. Boy, it'd be fun if we could.
Were you talking to me?
All right, should be any moment now. Oh, we're just waiting for you.
For me?
Dude, I sound like a lunatic. I just said we're waiting for you. As if me and all of the listeners are here waiting for you. I mean, we are.
When you said
right
me,
now, I'm the only one that was
terrified.
waiting for you.
Yeah.
I'm not possessed. I will assure you of that. But we were waiting for you, and now you're back. So
Good.
Hey, that's some real confidence in your listenership, right? To be on a podcast that's pre-recorded talking about we instead of I.
You know,
that's
people are going to listen.
That there is somebody listening to that.
Yeah.
But even if it's only one listener, technically that is we. So
yeah.
Anyhow.
That's for when you go back and listen to it like a week from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, man, I think we definitely need to point out the hat that's on your head for anybody that's watching. If we're ready to break such news forth. But, I mean, you're wearing it, so I think we ought to.
Yeah, I think so. We got on the move hats now. So this is the prototype. We will release them to the public at a later date. But yeah, we're working towards our goal of being able to sell merch. So maybe one day Ben and I don't have to doggedly ride so many horses all day. Even though I have a feeling we'd probably do that even if we had a bunch of money.
Yeah.
But right now I do it to keep the lights on, so.
Dude, isn't that not to like sidetrack off of the hat thing right this second, but just real quick, like just being thankful. It is pretty cool to get to work with horses for a living. Like there's not a lot of people that can say that. And, you know, the typical stereotype of, you know, to make $1 million in horses, you start with 3 million, or horses are a money pit and all that stuff. But I don't know, do you get a lot of odd looks? I know I certainly do when you're out and about or you're meeting relatives and they ask you what you do. and you talk about horses, and they're kind of like, you work with horses for a living? Like, I don't know if they're just talking down to you, or they're actually interested, or it's blowing their mind, or what. But it's it's kind of cool to get to tell people that and have nothing, like, there's nothing great about yourself. You're just like, I don't know. I just wanted to do it. It was a job, and now I do it. And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can go do it if you want to.
Yeah. I in my like immediate life, not so much. Um, but I think that's because in my immediate life, like the people that knew me growing up, that wasn't like such a far-fetched thing for me to end up doing. Um, but like when I talk to people that are maybe like friends, like out of state or something like that, and I like meet a friend of a friend and I tell them what I do. Yeah, definitely. There's like kind of a, oh, okay. Um, but I'll tell you one thing for sure. Like, there's not even anything close to the sense of pride I have when I tell people that I ride horses for the public, or sometimes, depending on who the group is, I'll be like, oh, I train horses. Just because you don't want to have that conversation of like, well, here's what riding a horse versus training a horse. It's like, we're at an airport. We don't need to have this conversation right now.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So that to me feels way better than a couple years ago when I was like, oh, I'm a software engineer, or I'm a software consultant or something. It was just like I wasn't ashamed of what I did, but I was just kind of matter of fact. And now I have like a sense of pride when someone does ask me what I do for a living. Because before I was like, oh, I do this thing, and like, it might be a career for me, but it's just the job I had out of college, and I've just been doing that for a while, and I make money and have a good life, and it just is what it is. But it was so kind of blah. And now I don't go around telling people what I do for a living, but if someone asks me, I have like a sense of pride about it, which I think is super, super fulfilling for any human being to be able to like, yeah, I do this, and I really like that I do this. Because I know I went to college with a lot of people who, your first job out of college might not be your dream job. It might be your stepping stone. But like you get to talk to people, and a natural conversation is, oh, what do you do for a living? And they're like, oh, I work for such and such a company right now. And then the first thing they start doing is explaining to you how, well, and I'm looking here, and I want to change roles, or like do this, or I want to go to school to like get a master's degree and then go do this. And that's, I'm not saying that's bad, like that's part of everyone's journey, but it's a really nice feeling when you can get to the point where this is what I do, and I don't feel like I need to justify what I do, and I don't feel like I have to explain how this is what I do right now, and my goal is for 18 months from now doing something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, totally understand that. Man, something else I take a lot of pride in is doing this podcast with you, man, because it's not the fact that it's a podcast. It's working with you, working together, because we live, far enough apart that it's not easy for us to get together. We've talked about
Mm-hmm.
doing some stuff in the future maybe, but we're good friends. We're in the same line of work, and it's really fun that we found a way to work together. Even though it's doing this, it's not really the fact that it's a podcast. It's really the fact that it's like an occupation. It's something we have to do every week, and we do it together. It's really fun, and there's kind of a sense of pride in that. You feel like you started a project with your buddy,
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get not in like a bad way, but did you get made fun of in the beginning when we started this?
Only by one person.
Yeah. My friends teased me. So I'm very fortunate that I'm really close with all the guys that I went to high school with. There's a group of probably like 10 to 15 of us that have all stayed in really close contact, which doesn't really happen ever. But, when I started this whole deal, I'd be like, oh yeah, I've got a podcast, da da da. And like, even I can remember my one friend was like, they were like, oh, well, everybody has podcasts these days. Like, just kind of tease him. He didn't mean anything by it. It's just like everyone has podcasts these days. And I'll use his name too, because it'll be funny if he hears this or one of my friends hears this. It was this friend I have named Kenneth that I went to high school with. And I just like immediately, like, they laughed and chuckled. And I thought this really quick in real time. I was like, man, he doesn't know like all the work it takes to like get into this. And I don't know how many episodes we'd done at that point, but we'd done enough and had some people on. And I was like, everyone has a podcast? He's like, yeah, dude, like everyone does it now. I'm like, okay, where's your podcast, Kenneth? And then he just shut up. And like I said, we were totally just like we were headed to go get a drink, like, and catch up and stuff, and teasing. But yeah, it's just, in the beginning it was really funny, and now it's cool. Every now and then people like hype me up. Like I've got one guy I know who listens to this that he was my roommate when I was in South Carolina, and he's just a friend of a friend, and literally like doesn't like have anything to do with horses in his life, but listens to this podcast as like in support of me. And that's like pretty cool. He's like, well, you're my friend, and my friend's doing this thing, and he already listens to a bunch of podcasts. He's like, yeah, I'll add it to the list and I'll listen to that podcast.
Man.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I think innocence is bliss a little bit for me. If we had it over to do again, I would feel kind of like a pretender at first, till we had something going on, enough to feel like you were legit. But I never felt that. It's only now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see how people would think that you're just trying to be cool and have a podcast too.
Yeah.
But I mean, we just kind of wanted to do it, right? And we both try to do what we do to the best of our ability. So, well, we're still doing them. But yeah, I could see that now, but I really didn't get much teasing, but except for one person teased me a little bit. But hey, I was going to tell you something.
Oh, go ahead.
As far as like the way our podcast is connected, some things, it's kind of interesting. So someone that listens to our podcast, I don't know. I don't really want to say people's names on here, certain people's names, but it's a good thing. But if they're listening and they know who they are, then good deal. And her daughter actually took lessons with Melanie Smith Taylor about 25 years ago in Germantown.
Oh, wow.
And she listens to the podcast, and I was telling her, I forget what we were talking about, and I said, oh yeah, you would like, this episode with Melanie Smith Taylor. And she's like, oh, Melanie Smith Taylor? Yeah, my daughter used to take riding lessons with her, and they don't have horses anymore or anything like that, but I thought that was kind of a cool connection.
Yeah.
And so she is now an avid listener of the podcast. But
nice.
Yeah,
I've got one other thing.
Connections like that.
I got one other thing I wanted to say, and it's because it happened a couple weeks ago, and I said, next time there's a podcast with just me and Ben, I need to mention this, and bringing up my friends made me think of this. So my friends, for better or worse, definitely keep me grounded. I think one thing I struggle with is, in this line of work, you can spend like all day by yourself. And I think having like a healthy social life is very important to having a healthy whole life. And sometimes I can get so focused on being financially successful and being healthy and da da da, do all this stuff, and then you look back and you're like, you've talked to 3 people in person this whole week, and it can maybe, for me at least, it can maybe not be the best thing, because we're tribal creatures. We're meant to have interactions and stuff, and so all that to say is I value when I do get to hang out with my friends, even though they're like non-horse people. And the reason they can keep me so grounded is you like can say stuff like, oh, like I've got this going on and this going on, and to you, or like if I said it to you, it would be like a big deal, good or bad. And to see that like stuff just doesn't even like resonate with quote unquote normal people, or people who aren't around horses, is very humbling. Because I remember I was running with my friends, and they're like, oh, what do you got going on next couple months? And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to get to go to this colt starting clinic. And they were like, a colt starting clinic? And I was like, yeah, man, it's going to be great. Like, I'm going to get to go to this place. I'm going to start this colt and do all this stuff. And they're like, do you get like a book and robes or something like that? Like, what do you mean? And they thought I was like CULT, cult starting. And like I was going on and on about how excited I was to do this and that, and dude, they were like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you trying to tell us right now? And then I was like, oh. And so that's like first off, I laughed really hard, and then I was like, man, that's just like a good reminder that never take yourself too seriously.
Yeah,
which
that's
I definitely do. But I thought that was so funny when they
that's
thought
pretty
that
hilarious.
Was cult starting, CULT starting.
Yeah, the cult of On the Move.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, some of these podcasts, I won't like name any names, but you probably know what I mean. Like, there's certain people that do podcasts and they kind of get a following of people, and it is a little bit like a cult. Cult.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if we'll become a cult. Maybe.
Man, I hope so.
We should just make sure that we stay. If we can do it, we can like both be the cult leaders, and then neither one of us has to be like. If we go down in history as being terrible, then we'll be terrible together. Mm-hmm. And if we have great success, then we can, not like try and, just have success if it's all because of you. But I would like to have success even if it's just because of you, or vice versa. So for better or worse, we could be cult leaders. And
I would ride
flock.
I would ride your coattails very willingly, Ben. I have no problem with that.
Yes, reciprocally, I would do that as well.
Yeah.
Hey, do you think you want to just kind of wrap it up here soon, because just the two of us? And I just realized there's a girl who's going to come by and ride her horse with me here in about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Because it's going home soon, and she's going to come by and do the little deal, kind of see where things are at.
Yeah, no problem, man. No, this has been a good visit. It's really fun to get people on the podcast, obviously, and it's a major part of what we do. But sometimes it's like you and I don't have a lot of long form conversations like this outside of the podcast. We might talk for like 20 minutes or something. But yeah, it's good to just kind of unwind it all and see what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, man. Yeah, I love making podcasts with you. It's fun. It's a blast. And it is fun getting guests on here. But I guess we'll have all kind of people coming up. What is this episode 45?
It might be. Let me check. I think that you're right. No, this is 44.
44. 44. Yeah. Man, that's great. I guess episode 52. Boy, look, I'm such a mathematician, almost as smart as you guys that went to college. Episode 52 will be our year-end anniversary, our 1-year anniversary, right?
Yeah, I would think so. So
Dude.
maybe we'll have merch by then, like merch we can sell to people.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Be great.
But
yeah,
while we're wrapping up, check out on the video Ben's mug, my hat. We've got follow us on Instagram and Facebook. That's where that stuff will get released when we finally do get to selling stuff. And yeah, maybe one day this will help us, like I said, not have to doggedly ride horses all day for money. We can just doggedly ride horses all day because we love it.
Yeah. But yeah, if you're going to support some kind of entertainment, might as well support something good. I think, Joe, I mean, you and I, we both support quite a few causes that other people run. It's fun. It's fun to support people that are your friends. And
yeah,
with all the crap in the world too, like every time you turn on your phone, there's like so much crap going on, right? And especially in entertainment. So I love seeing people that put out good content, and hopefully we keep doing that because I think we're doing a good job of that. But
yeah, absolutely, man. We'll keep on keeping on, staying on the move.
oh yeah. Alrighty,
Awesome.
man.
See you guys.